Welcome to this, your daily briefing, and this is a special Antoni Conte and Fabio Paratici edition, as the jungle drums tell us that these two gentlemen are on their way to Hotspur Way. Yet to be signed, yet to be confirmed, but certainly it's a lot more tangible a rumour than the Pochettino back to Tottenham cobblers was. But that got a lot of noise because somebody stole somebody else's rumour. So, moving on, I thought that it would be useful to deal in some facts in this clip. I've been looking online and already people are drawing up lists of players they can get rid of and players they can, and all this sort of business. So that's great, but speculation on the future doesn't really help us very much. That's just like everybody wants a bike for Christmas. It's nice to know, but doesn't really get us anywhere. So there's a couple of things here. I think the most obvious is Conte. What does that tell us if that's the way that Daniel's gone? It suggests to me a last roll of the dice, quite frankly, because the gap between Conte and Mauricio, I wouldn't want to be tasked with having to measure that. I don't think there's an awful lot in it. I think they both have similar temperaments. Let's put it like this: if we drew a Venn diagram, there'd be quite a lot of stuff to put in that little middle ellipse shape. Conte has form for being passionate, for being brutal, and for maybe caring too much. And I'm just wondering how that is going to gel with some of the pansies that are in the Spurs dressing room and the mob that have been hanging on like grim death since God knows when. I mean, again, Eric Dyer, Harry Winks, I'm talking about you. You're no good, and you've seen off two decent managers in your time on this planet, and that doesn't sit well with me, and I'm sure it doesn't sit well with others. So bringing Conte in, that's not a holistic approach. Is it the Tottenham way? Is it the Tottenham DNA? Again, difficult to say really, to make a case for that. Not really a compelling argument for that for Antoni Conte to be the panacea in terms of the tactical style. I would say he's low block and then aggressive attack. If people want to try and tell me that's the Tottenham way, that's great. But historically, we're a push and run side, and that's free-flowing football and intelligent use of the ball, which probably stemmed from, in those days, the ball was like a medicine ball. So you weren't doing anything staggering with it, and you had to make the ball do the work if you wanted to survive. So is Conte going to bring us, I don't know, football in the modern age, 20 minutes in, and if the fans haven't seen anything exciting, that's when you start to get the I'm bored comments turn up on social media, because a lot of people never understood in the first place, and a lot of people have forgotten how to watch a game of football. So if anyway, there's lots of limitations, but going back to the business of, people drawing lists of players in, players out, the restrictions are enormous. Ageing squad, devalued squad, compressed activity in the transfer markets because of the post-COVID thing. It's going to be a tough job. And the emphasis for Conte to succeed at Tottenham, for me, is based upon his ability to get a tune out of the bums and stiffs that are sat on the luxury little, with the uplight and the downlight round them, the little superstars. So let's not look to the future. Let's look at the past, because sometimes the answers are there. That's why people dig things up. If a good manager and a director of football are to aid Spurs in their mission, then they must be left alone. That's not a guess. That's based upon the fact that we've already had that system. We had it with Pochettino and Paul Mitchell. Mitchell, as you will recall, was just as Conte and Paratici were at Juventus together, Poch and Mitchell were at Southampton together. At Southampton, they did very well. At Tottenham, they did less well because Mitchell, as the best that I understand it, did some good work, and then he wanted to do more work, which Daniel didn't deem to be so good. And there was a hilarious interview, you can find it, Google it, and Levy spoke in the most casual manner and most, just, oh yeah, well, I remember, but... And he not only fired Mitchell, but he put him on gardening leave for 16 months. Now, that's the most extraordinary thing I can recall as a grown adult in football in my life. God knows what contract Mitchell signed, but what a little caveat that was. And Levy referred to Mitchell as Mitch. If somebody put you on gardening leave for 16 months, you're not playing golf with them at the weekend. You're not going around there for a barbecue. And you're certainly not calling them Mitch. Son of a Mitch, maybe, but that's extraordinary. But so what I'm saying is, a blanket was put over Mitchell and he was suffocated in his post. And so the first question we need to ask is, well, was Mitchell any good? You know, Daniel didn't get up one day and irrationally get rid of him. So I've got a list. There we go. I've got a list. Thanks to the Monaco Tribune for this. Saved me an awful lot of work. And the list is of all the players that Poch got at Saints. Then Ronald Koeman, who replaced him. And then the deals that he was involved with the Spurs. So remember, we've got a good coach who is working on his way to being an elite coach, because at this point he had won nothing. But at Southampton, he got Victor Wanyama even, Dejan Lovren, Ricki Lambert, Adam Lallana, Lovren, and Luke Shaw. Oh, two Lovrens. Monaco Tribune, you typo riddle rag. So those names we've all heard of. Love them or hate them. There's not a lot of total rubbish in there. And for Koeman, Saido Mane, Duasan Tadic, Graziano Pelle, Ryan Bertrand, Shane Long, and Fraser Forster. And this is going back a few years, right? So whatever opinions you have of these players, it's worth considering that back then, I don't know when that was, 1990 something, that these players, a lot of them, went on to do some really good works. And if we then move, and even if they weren't brilliant players, they got themselves into a position for even the shortest amount of time on the old, if you think of those transfer market graphs, where they went for big money. Now, you may say, and I certainly agree with you, that Luke Shaw was a load of old junk, but he didn't look like a load of old junk for a long time. And the others, they speak for themselves. They're enormously successful footballers. So Mitchell, for the good works, because you don't hire somebody on the basis of their previously bad works, Mitchell, for his good works, was then brought to Tottenham and sealed deals under his reign. Kieran Trippier, Sonny, Toby Alderweireld, and Dele Alli. So you can say what you want, you can get Mardy and say, oh yeah, but he probably just read the back of the newspaper. But the reality is, not your reality, but this reality, is that he was the sporting director or director of football or whatever you want to call it for these two clubs. And he sourced a coachload of players, the majority of which were successful. And I've got his players that he sourced at Red Bull Leipzig. But to be honest with you, A, I'm really uncomfortable with the pronunciation of most of them. And B, I'm not that familiar with Leipzig's team and activities and all the rest of it. So I can't read them all out and then say, and they were all brilliant. But Red Bull have done well, and certainly Mitchell did sufficiently well for that Bundesliga outfit to then get picked up by Monaco. So this is the point that I'm building up to here, is that the reason that Mitchell worked is for one club, and then partially for another. He was allowed to do his job. Now, is Paratici going to be allowed to do his job? Right, so here is a theoretical situation. Let's say Antoni Conte turns around to Daniel Levy and says, I can't do anything with the boy we've got in that spot at the moment. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen under Jose, and, you know, it was threatening to happen under Poch, but the reality is we've hit a wall. So Fabio has come to me. I agree with him. We should get Jack Grealish. So Daniel Levy says, no problemo, Antonio. Sometime later, Steve Hitchen emerges with a piece of paper. Daniel looks at it and goes, Waldo, my boy, you've done it again. Antonio. Antonio pulls up. See. Hands him a piece of paper. Who is this? Stefan Stepover. He's setting League One on fire. He's 19 and only 16 million. Oh my God. Apologies for the rubbish Punch and Judy routine, but, you know. Is that going to happen? Because if that happens, and my brain has just reminded me of something. If that's going to happen, there was a moment in the All or Nothing thing, the Amazon thing, and talking as if they'd been asked to redecorate a house with one bucket of paint and you know, half a paintbrush. Levy, Cullen and Hitchen said, oh yeah, well, one of them said, oh yeah, I suppose we better get a striker, you know. And Levy says, and forgive me, I can't remember the exact number, but he says, oh, we spent 128 million, but nobody seems to mention that. And that, in a nutshell, is the problem at Tottenham. Yes, Daniel, you did sign off 128 million, 188 million, but you bought, not entirely, but you bought far too much, should we say. You bought far too much junk that nobody asked for. You bought from a spreadsheet. You and Steve, I hate the transfer windows, Hitchin, which is great. That's like having a chef, right, who hates cooking. You spent a lot of money. Nobody's denying that. You spent a lot of money, but you didn't spend it wisely. And if you're going to run the same routine on Antonio Conte as you did on Poch and on Mitchell, then gardening leave is on the horizon for our new pal Fabio, and that's a fact. So we're back to the usual thing with Daniel Levy, that if the leopard doesn't change its spots, then we're going to get the same result again and again and again. I'm more excited about this possible duo coming in than I would have been about, you know, say, Eddie Howe or Graham Potter. No disrespect to any of those gentlemen, but I just think he would look ridiculous to stand in front of £1 billion stadium and say, and here they are. Whereas what we need is something with some ambition. But if you're going to manacle the ambitious people that you bring in, if you're going to chain them to a radiator, then you're not going to get anywhere. So it's all over to you. I think this might be the last roll of the dice, like I say, because Levy doesn't do succession management. He certainly won't be. I mean, he to me, 44, 45 days in, we are without a manager. That says to me that he's had a lot of doors slammed in his face. He's running out. He's running out of options. The jig is up. Everybody knows what it's like at Tottenham. But if he fails to pull it around with these two, then he's in a lot of trouble. And I'd say he'd be looking, reviewing his position, shall we say. And he wants to be careful. And if he doesn't know he wants to be careful, then I'm happy to tell him. ENIC are a big company with many wings and many willing to step into his shoes. So if this is it. Okay, good luck. Keep it on.